My name is Ria, and these are my colleagues, Danny and Tanya. We're here today to talk about PhD, or preventing heart disease, as it is the #1 killer of the United States. In our presentation, we will be discussing different demographics, causes and risk factors, treatments, preventative methods, and variations of heart disease. At the end of this presentation, we hope to leave you feeling a bit more educated on heart disease and its vices in our community, as well as how to prevent it in your own personal lives. With that being said, I would like to pass it to Tanya, who's going to discuss the variations of heart disease.
Thank you, Ria. Heart disease is the leading cause of death in the United States, claiming the lives of more than 500,000 victims in the year of 1990. There are numerous types of complications associated with the heart, and this visual lists 7 examples. Coronary artery disease is one of the types of heart disease. Caused by a buildup of fatty substances or atherosclerosis, coronary artery disease is when the coronary arteries are narrowed due to the amount of plaque buildup, thus restricting the blood flow and decreasing the overall functionality of the heart. Arrhythmias are irregular heartbeats. Faster heartbeats are classified as tachycardia at a heart rate of over 100 beats per minute, while slower heart rhythms are bradycardia at a number of 60 beats per minute or less. Rhythms like atrial fibrillation or ventricular tachycardia are classified as tachycardic as they are faster rhythms, and sinus bradycardia is a slower rhythm. Heart failure includes both systolic and diastolic failures. In systolic heart failure, the left side of the heart is stretched and the wall thin, so the heart is too weak to pump enough blood to the rest of the body at a normal ejection fraction of 52%. In diastolic heart failure, the chambers thicken and the heart is too stiff to fill, and this reduces the heart's efficiency of pumping blood to the rest of the body as well. Valve disease occurs when one or more valves in the heart don't function as they should. The most common valve abnormality is mitral valve prolapse, which is when the mitral valve in the left side of the heart doesn't open and close properly, leading to regurgitation of blood going from the left ventricle to the left atrium. Next, pericarditis is the inflammation of the pericardium of the heart, which is a thin tissue sac that coats the heart for lubrication. Pericarditis is commonly caused by viral infections or heart attacks and is rare. Hypertrophic cardiomyopathy is when the wall thickens and the heart isn't able to pump blood as efficiently to the rest of the body. And lastly, cardiac arrest is a sudden, unexpected loss of heart function due to an electrical disturbance. And this type of medical emergency requires immediate CPR or the use of an AED. And now Ria will get into talking about demographics and statistics about heart disease.
Thank you, Tanya. Different demographics are affected disproportionately all across America. The first demographic I will be touching on is people of lower socioeconomic communities. Reports from 1999 to 2010 show that people of lower income classes were almost at double the risk to have one factor of CVD than those of high income populations. This was due to stress. Stress is one of the biggest risk factors of cardiovascular disease. Studies from Rochester University confirm that long-term chronic stress leads to an increase in blood pressure, blood cholesterol, triglycerides, and many more. Stresses that people of lower socioeconomic classes face include income, housing, diet, and many more, which is why for our initiative brochure, we intend to place them in public places of lower socioeconomic classes in order to spread awareness about different alternative and affordable resource options for both diet and exercise. Another demographic that is disproportionately affected is women. Women genetically have smaller blood vessels and blood chambers, which restricts the flow of oxygen-rich blood to the heart. Additionally, hormones like estrogen and progesterone are naturally more dominant in women, and these hormones have been known to promote blood clot formation. Lastly, the racial disparities of CVD are extremely evident. African Americans are 30% more likely to die from acute coronary syndrome than any other race. According to the American Heart Association, this is due to a variation in a gene they have called the angiotensin-converting enzyme gene, or the ACE gene. This gene controls your sensitivity to sodium, and as little as an extra teaspoon of salt is able to increase the blood pressure by 5 milliliters of mercury in individuals with this variation. Additionally, 72 to 75% of the Mexican American population is obese, putting them more at risk for heart disease and congestive heart failure. South Asians, on the other hand, exhibit more genetic risk factors. One of these is an accumulation of visceral fat surrounding the abdomen, lungs, liver, and heart, which contribute to a condition that Tanya mentioned earlier called atherosclerosis. I would now like to pass it back to Danny to talk about different risk factors.
Thanks, Ria. Now that we know the how and who of heart disease, let's take a look at the why. The leading cause of heart disease is high blood pressure. High blood pressure can lead to hypertension and eventually atrial fibrillation. It has the potential to damage the heart and surrounding organs. Next up, we have cholesterol. It is a common misconception that cholesterol is bad for you, when in fact, that is not the case. There are two types of cholesterol, LDL and HDL. High levels of LDL are associated with buildups of plaque in the bloodstream and arteries. High levels of HDL, or good cholesterol, are associated with protection against heart disease. A good way to remember the difference between the two is you want lower LDL and you want higher HDL. Total cholesterol levels should be below 200 milligrams per deciliter, and LDL levels should be below 100 milligrams per deciliter. Moving on, we have type 2 diabetes. A type 2 diabetic does not produce enough insulin to counteract the amount of sugar their body is intaking. So it can lead to a buildup of sugar in the bloodstream, blocking blood flow. Linking all of these together is obesity. A person who is obese, or a person with a BMI over 30, likely has at least one of these aforementioned risk factors, putting them at a greater risk for heart disease than the general population. Moving on to behavioral risks, we have poor diet and poor exercise. Coupled with one another, they simply exacerbate pre-existing risk conditions or help to create them in the first place. Next up, we have use of tobacco, vapes, and drugs. These obviously can cause major damage to your heart. Something that many people do not consider is excessive alcohol use, that being more than 1 drink of wine per woman and 2 for men. Finally, something that many do not consider is stress. As Ria mentioned before, stress is something that can lead to heart disease. Now, I'll pass it back to Ria to discuss early signs and symptoms of heart disease.
Thank you, Danny. Heart disease can be mistaken for chronic kidney disease, lung disease, anemia, and many more, which is why it is important to pick up on the early signs and symptoms. The most common symptom of cardiovascular disease is fatigue without a reason. Unexplained fatigue can be defined as tiredness and shortness of breath doing everyday activities like grocery shopping, talking, and even walking. Another common symptom of cardiovascular disease is swelling in the hands and the lower limbs. When your heart is failing to pump blood effectively, your system backs up, causing inflammation in your lower limbs, which is a condition called edema. Other common symptoms and signs of CVD include dizziness, a weak pulse, heart pain, chills, and sweating. It is important to watch out for these symptoms, not only to protect yourself, but to protect those around you and potentially save a life. With that being said, I'd like to pass it back to Danny to talk about treatment options.
Thanks, Ria. Common medications for treating heart disease are statins. Statins are used to lower your LDL levels, which will decrease the amount of blockages in your arteries due to the removal of cholesterol. Next up, we have beta blockers. Beta blockers are used to reduce the amount of force with which the heart beats as well as the rate. This decreases your blood pressure, reducing your risk of heart disease. Beta blockers also help to widen your veins and arteries, further decreasing your risk of heart disease. Our last medication is a blood thinner. Blood thinners reduce your chance of clots in major veins and arteries. This helps to reduce your chance of pulmonary embolism, heart attack, and stroke. Now we have lifestyle changes. 3 simple lifestyle changes you can include in your daily life are 30 minutes of moderate physical activity every day for your exercise, cutting out fatty and salty foods from your diet because these are the foods that are typically associated with heart disease, and avoiding smoking, tobacco, vapes, and excessive alcohol consumption. Before giving it to Tanya to discuss our initiative, I like to talk about family history. It is very important that you're aware of your family history to make sure you don't have any of these pre-existing risk conditions and that these treatment options are safe for you. I'll give it over to Tanya now.
Thanks, Danny. Perhaps the greatest value SCARF has taught us is how we impact our community in a positive way and how we become proactive members. Our mission, preventing heart disease, was our main focus for our initiative. In order to continue advocacy on combating heart disease in a healthy manner, our team decided to get involved with their community first-handedly, and through our SHARE initiative, Sharing Hearts Actively, Responsibly, and Effectively, our team was able to address the importance of taking proper health precautions in order to mitigate the risk of obtaining heart disease via accessible pamphlets. Our team spread information on how to obtain adequate resources in order to improve eating and exercising habits, to breaking down heart disease in a basic manner for community members to understand and to spread awareness. With that, I hope you can support the mission of Project PhD, preventing heart disease during these times. Thank you for listening.